Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by Betspur.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. The remainder of the AFC South is on the menu for today. Andy, hopefully you are doing well on this beautiful summer Wednesday. What do you make of this division? Any thought? You probably, since no news has really broken, nothing really interesting has happened since we talked about the Jags and the and the Texans. So no changes there. What's your feel on the NFC South? Are we going to talk about the champion of the AFC South today?
Do you remember when we did this and then Andrew Luck retired like 3 days later?
I do.
I was at a restaurant called Pittsburgh Blue. It was a new steakhouse that opened in town.
I was at the beach.
My wife was unimpressed with the amount of time I was spending on my phone all of a sudden. I mean, obviously kind of a depressing talk we had about Houston. Jacksonville was a very cryptic. I don't know. We're not sure on a lot of things. I think the only thing we're sure on is that the quarterback is a likely hit. The coaching might be an issue. The leadership might be an issue. Like those teams either of those teams surprising and making their way into the conversation for a title. Maybe Jacksonville seems obviously more likely just because it's not a whole mess and you never know. Like the coaching could just click. It could work out. You could have an instant success in quarterback, but it does feel like the Colts or the Titans are probably going to be, and obviously you see the odds. They're not co-favorites, but close enough, pretty much all across most of the books. And
you know what?
It seems likely that the regression for Tennessee just isn't big enough, or Wentz, has enough juice left in the tank with some good coaching to get it done. Like one of these teams is likely to win like 11 games. Again, they both won 11 games last year.
Yeah. But much like the NFC East, it would be shocking if any team from this division were to be in the mix for a Super Bowl. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would.
The NFC, you can pretty much don't worry about the NFC East when you're handicapping the Super Bowl. Don't worry about the AFC South. Is that fair?
Yeah, especially just because of the conference they're in. Like the high-level teams in the AFC North, the Chiefs, the Bills. There's just too many high-level teams. The winner of this is like fifth or sixth fiddle, maybe worse. And again, like last year, I think the two teams, they did finish both 11-5. They tied. Indy got the short end of that stick due to a worse divisional record. But yeah, these were two 11-5 teams that I don't think we're really discussing as threats to do anything in the playoffs. They're both playing very good teams right away, and it's kind of where we're going to be stuck at this year. Wouldn't be surprised if these two teams tied again. We went into a tiebreaker. The loser actually made the playoffs again. They both lose their first-round playoff game. Like it could be a lot of deja vu in this division.
Deja vu all over again. That's not crazy. Let's start with the Colts. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Right, yeah, like I said, they were 11-5. It was a good year, right?
Yeah. I mean, they had some good moments. I definitely remember last year heading into the regular season having a strong opinion that Tennessee was going to win the AFC South. I didn't think it was going to be a runaway, but and again, this wasn't based on, I love Ryan Tannehill and I hate Phillip Rivers. And, it literally was just the Titans were given one of those schedules that you just kind of knew they were going to get off to a good start, right? They just happened to have like these huge stretch at the beginning of the season where they just didn't leave home. There's just lots and lots and lots of home games. A bye, just as good situationally as you possibly could have hoped for, to where you're just like, this team's going to get off to a good start. They'll pick up a little momentum, and then later in the season, they could just lean on Derrick Henry. So, this team is going to be in it and probably wins the South, and I'll go ahead and take a favorable price on them to win the South. Texans were actually in the mix to win the South in terms of the odds last year. The Colts, on the other hand, like it wasn't as much as a I don't like this team. I don't believe in this team. Like they had a lot of things that were really, really, going really, really well for them. Like their GM is good. He made some, he made some good acquisitions, some sharp acquisitions. They made some good draft choices. Their coach Frank Reich is a guy that I absolutely think is he's like an Andy Reid sort of guy in that you see him coach a couple of seasons and this guy can coach for as long as he feels like it, right? Like he's like, there's not going to be a season where you have a Frank Reich coach team and you're like, I'm not sure Frank Reich's right for the NFL. Like he is an NFL coach. He will always kind of be in the upper half of NFL coaches to where he is never realistically in, danger, I think, of being dismissed or for a potential upgrade. Like I just don't see it. Frank Reich is a good coach. He gets the most out of his team in general. He makes good decisions on when to go for it on fourth down in general. And they had a pretty complete team last year, which you pair with a top 15 performance from Phillip Rivers, and you have a pretty obvious top 15 offense. And then not a lot really has changed short of the quarterback position from last year to this year.
Is it really a change for Frank Reich, though? It'll be his fourth season and his fourth starting quarterback. It's not like he is not used to this sort of shit.
That's a great point.
Like he's been, as all the nice things we say about him, we could probably tack that on here. He's had no continuity at the quarterback position. He's done a lot with I don't want to say a little because they've drafted well. A lot of props to Ballard. Yeah, anyone who's managed anything about this team, they put together a decent roster with what they've had and what they've lost, and having, essentially Andrew Luck was on his way to maybe a Hall of Fame career and just cut it short, stopped playing football. That was a thing that happened to him, man. So and it did turn out to be one of the easier schedules. Like prefacing, I said they're 11-5. That's a good year. If you go back and do a postmortem on schedule strength, it turned out to be one of the easier schedules.
And shoot, one of those 5 losses was to Jacksonville week 1.
They lost to Jacksonville. They did lose. They lost to all 3 of the playoff teams from the AFC North.
Oh, yeah,
and they lost to the Titans. So like none of those are bad losses. But then, they did lose to Jacksonville week 1. I had them in Survivor League. So I didn't get to play Survivor League very long in the 2020 NFL season. I took the Colts and everyone. Like, what a big dumb idiot. Anyway, easy schedule. But again, it was tough to just bring in another quarterback like that. And I guess if you are going to do that and bring in another quarterback, at least it was a guy who was very experienced, was able to put together a pretty good season, honestly. All things
age 39 year for Phillip Rivers was a borderline Pro Bowl type of season. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was more than fine. So
yeah, I did too.
It was a semi-success, but at the same time, now you're in the same position. I need another quarterback.
He got sacked a lot.
Do you remember when he was reaching out?
Yeah, that was against the Ravens.
It was like the funniest thing we saw.
Actually, you know what? Now you're reminding me of a lot of things, and I think you said it exactly correctly, which was outside of that first shocking loss to Jacksonville, they took care of business against the teams that they were clearly better than. They took care of business against the Vikings, the Bears. They took care of business against the Lions, the Texans, the Raiders. Those were not competitive games in general. They got a very lucky win against the Packers.
Yeah,
the Packers gave them that win. I'm still angry about that game. That should have been a Packers absolute runaway, and they did. They let them off the hook. And then the other tough teams on their schedule, the Browns, the Ravens, the Steelers, were all convincing losses.
And the Bills. I mean, the Bills. That was a close playoff game by the score.
It was a close play. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that was another division-winning team. Like they played a bunch of shitty teams and they beat them, and then they played a bunch of division-winning teams or playoff teams, and really they beat the Packers.
They lost. We'll get to the play. Let's get to the playoff game in a second. But I want to point out, like, where you kind of knew that they were frauds, I think, was 7-3. They already got a home win against the Titans. They can basically ice the division with a road win against the Titans. And they gave up 229 yards rushing. They got run the F over by Tennessee in that second contest, 45-26. It didn't even feel that close. And at that point, you kind of knew, okay, this is a team that's going to beat the dregs, and they're going to get beat by the good teams. And the Bills tried to let them into that game, in the wild card game, even though it felt like they were pretty clearly the better team. What were they, 6-point favorites?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds right. I didn't check that.
5, 6, something like that. And the Bills won almost every like high leverage moment in that game, I feel like, until, because again, that at one point that game was 24-10 Buffalo with less than a quarter to play. Phillip Rivers does what Phillip Rivers does. He gets a couple of comeback, scores going up against a prevent defense. Two nice touchdown drives that were pretty quick. The Bills kind of took their foot off the gas, only come away with one field goal from the time that it was 24-10. By the way, you want to talk about an all-time bad beat if you had 50, if you had under 50 and a half. You took it in the shorts there because it had the 2-point conversion for the Colts on their last score, took that to 51, and really you went into that fourth quarter with 27 points scored. So you were thinking game over. This under is safe and sound. But you also made a bad play because you could have played that earlier in the week and gotten a better number and gotten an under.
I also have to go back and look now to see if I bet. I took it pretty easy in the playoffs.
Those were 7-point favorites. I had the under in that one, and I had a better number than the closing 50 and a half, so I was fine. But yeah, it was a good, fun playoff game. Josh Allen gets his first ever playoff win against a frisky Phillip Rivers and company. But there were a couple of moments in that one where Frank Reich didn't really have his A game as a coach and as a decision maker. I feel like that kind of kept them out of that when he was going for it. What the plays he called in the high leverage moments, I didn't feel like were great. Kicking field goals early when you were going to need to score some serious points to beat a Buffalo offense that absolutely was going to get into the high 20s. There were some head scratching moments from Frank Reich in that playoff game, I think. Has Frank Reich ever won a playoff game?
As a player.
As a player, yeah. And as a coach, as an assistant with the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I don't think he ever did win a playoff game.
I think he's like 0-3.
Okay.
I'll look that up while we talk about this upcoming season because he is 1-2. He did win one.
Okay.
I'll have to figure out when that was. I'll look that up right now. But yeah, and this is we're going to get to the changes now. Are we kind of in this? Like I made the joke, and it wasn't even that much of a joke because it does kind of suck for Frank Reich and the rest of this team, the rest of the staff, that they are going to change quarterbacks every single season. But it just 2020 all over again. It's feel like the same situation at all. Like the Jacoby Brissett thing was tough. This might be tougher. Like we'll get into some Wentz stats, but this might be an even bigger challenge. Taking a guy that's in this part of his career and doing this. So like they did make both teams are going to talk about today lost their offensive coordinator. Sirianni went to the Eagles. I think did Wright call plays too though? Because I'm pretty sure
we went over this.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
actually we went over this anyway.
Somebody dropped me a note and they said Sirianni was involved in crafting the game.
He was
plan.
like a sounding board was the word I saw in an article.
Yeah, he was a game planning impact, but in the game itself, I believe Frank Reich was calling the plays. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but it's going to impact them in some way, shape, or form. I mean, we don't really know what to expect in terms of changes with this offense. That can disrupt you as far as you're just ask Doug Peterson when Frank Reich left. It definitely impacts your offensive planning.
It's like you and I. You're my sounding board. Like, joking aside, we do this all the time. We bounce ideas
Sure.
off each other or stuff. And if you lose that, I mean, that could affect Frank Wright's offensive game planning. It'll be Marcus Brady, the quarterback
He was
coach.
elevated. Yeah, elevated from QB coach. Okay. I like when you get an elevated. Yeah, an elevated is in general, that's pretty decent continuity.
He was in those same meetings last year. He was in the offensive meetings because he was the quarterback's coach. He has been an offensive coordinator in the CFL, where he has three Grey Cup champions. So Marcus Brady stepping in, but yeah, Sirianni wasn't calling plays. He was more of a advisor, game planner, I suppose. It still hurts to lose a high level coach. And then outside of that, they drafted a D end, and Anthony Costanzo retired.
Okay,
and then wins.
Oh yeah. These are meaningful changes. I mean, Costanzo was a really good tackle. I think that was a little bit unexpected. Replacing your left tackle with Eric Fisher, who's coming off of that serious injury, is a little. That's a little bit of a tough marriage with Wentz.
The offensive line in general was a strength. Losing your left tackle can take a strength and turn it. I don't think losing one piece of that, even if it is a left tackle, which is massively important, can take it from a strength to a weakness, but it could neutralize it a bit until you get that sorted out. And yeah, it doesn't sound like Eric Fisher would be ready to start the season. That injury was in the AFC title game. So, I mean, it hasn't been that long since he blew his foot, ankle, Achilles, whatever up. It sounded like it was a longer injury. He might not be back till later in the year is what I'm hearing. So there could be some issues at O-line. So that Costanzo retirement might be bigger than people may let on, especially since they didn't do anything about it in the draft. Essentially, they decided to go with an edge rusher to go along with, some of the success they had in the middle of the defensive line last year. They want to pick up a little on the edge rushing, and we talk about this all the time with rookies coming in and defensive rookies having struggles to make an impact. We did say that if you are an edge rusher, a pass rusher, that can be a little bit of an easier transition. So hopefully if you're the Colts, if you're a Colts backer, Colts fan, Colts lifer, Kwity Paye can just step right in and become something of a force in the edge. And he was very good. He was obviously, it's a first round pick. He should be able to contribute immediately. So that, and the defense, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this defense at certain times. Some of it from last year I felt like was how the game was managed by the coaching staff at times. But I think this can be a good defense. I'll have to check where I have them ranked. So, essentially, I mean, we're talking about all the changes, but the biggest one is Mr. Wins. That's right. That's the crux of this whole conversation today.
Man,
I'm not bullish on this. I'm not bullish on this team. Like,
I guess here's a question for you. There was another preview, one of these previews we did, where you basically had, I mean, it was pretty much the same exact story of was it Darnold and the Panthers? Maybe I think that was the one. You had, like we were kind of like, there is potentially an upside here with Darnold. We don't know. He might be able to pleasantly surprise. Like that's an outcome I'm willing to entertain. And then I feel like Wentz is in a very similar situation, except on a better team in general around him and a better coach. And yet I'm not necessarily willing to entertain it because the experience of betting on Wentz last year was so mentally scarring. Like
it was. But I do want to remind you, as we are a couple weeks out from the NBA Finals, like we got to take these mental scars and put them away. You were mentally scarred by the Bucks beating you 2 years ago in the bubble.
That's fair.
I'm not, and I was there too. I was right there with you. So, I mean, it is tough. But this one I think is a lot tougher to grasp just because of some of the numbers he put up. And yes, even with your left tackle retiring, this offensive line will be better than the Eagles' offensive line. That said, and it's like for every positive I can find for Wentz, there's two negatives. Like, even if this offensive line doesn't take a meaningful step back, if the fill-in players and then finally Eric Fisher do a good job of, anchoring the left side of this line, he was not good from a clean pocket last year. He was dead last with his on-target rate from a clean pocket. He wasn't good from a clean pocket. He was worse under pressure. He was sacked a ton. He led the league in interceptions. And he was essentially, if you go by some of these important metrics, he was just a shade better than Drew Lock. Really, over a meaningful sample. The fact they didn't pull him earlier was more of a product of the fact that the entire division was so down that they're like, let's say Dallas doesn't have the injuries. Dallas is like a 12, 13 win team because the offense actually works. The defense isn't quite as bad. And the Eagles are sitting 6 games back midseason. They probably
Wentz
go to Jalen Hurts a
way
lot
earlier.
faster. And I did bring this up off the air a little too. There's something to be said for this contract, and things might get weird. I don't know. You can say teams don't want to do this. Teams always want to compete. But we see this in baseball all the time with the service time stuff when they don't bring players up fast enough to try to save a year or something. Wentz's contract is the trade was for a first rounder that they won't have to give up if he doesn't play 75% of the snaps. So like there's some weird incentives to bench him if it's not working out. I believe it's 75 or 70 plus a playoff appearance. So there's some weird stuff with this contract. I really don't know how this is going to go. And I just have a page full of negative stats about Wentz that you don't need to hear because any article you're going to read about Wentz stepping in any Indianapolis sort of publication is going to have all this. It's not good. He was pretty much dead last in my quarterback rankings last year. And the injuries in offensive line, the problems with wide receivers.
He earned it. He
earned it on top of that. Like other people have dealt with offensive line injuries, have dealt with shitty wide receiver rooms, and they weren't this bad. Like it was problems. It wasn't like, oh, the receiver wasn't open. No, you didn't even come close. Like accuracy, taking too many sacks, bad interceptions, on top. It seemed to just pile up every week until it's like, well, our Jalen Hurts rookie of the year ticket's dead.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think why this is like, maybe it's a path dependency thing because like out of the gate, like I believed in Wentz. He showed us impressive things. Like he was freaking Houdini who kind of evaded pocket pressure when it was pocket pressure and made spectacular plays either with his legs or with his arm. And it was like, this guy's he's got it. Like that was like the Eagles have their guy, like they got him. And then the regression, the gradual decay of his performance over the next 2 seasons was just, it feels one way. It feels like one way. Like I can't point to any other examples of a young quarterback who looked like so promising and then had a decay in performance, and then just because of a new venue, because of a new coach, because of a better team, because of a healthier team, it all turned around like that. So I'm struggling for just any kind of a anecdotal prior, right?
And the injury to the knee, sometimes they say a lot of a knee injury is psychological. Trusting it again, he doesn't move the same. And you're right. When he first came in, it was one of those where, all right, we've seen a player or two come from FCS. Jerry Rice went to Mississippi Valley State.
Sure.
We've seen, or even lower level college, like, Big Ben was a MAC quarterback. Flacco, I don't even know if I want to put him in a conversation. Flacco had a really good season one time, and he played for Delaware. Like, it wasn't unheard of a lower level quarterback coming in and having an NFL career. We were a little doubtful. We didn't know. But then it's like, oh my God, he's Russell Wilson light. Like, he's making things happen. He was, like you said, Houdini. When you say Houdini, I think about Russell Wilson, where there's like, you can't see him on the screen because he's underneath the scrum of like offensive and defensive linemen meeting. And then suddenly he's 3 yards to the side of the scrum throwing a deep ball to Doug Baldwin. Like, whoa, what happened there? Like, we saw some of those things. And then, I don't know what else to say but the injuries. I think I'm going to put it on the injury because that was, multiple injuries really, but the knee one was gross, man. That thing just got crunched. So between teams figuring him out and the injuries, I think we're at where we're at. He could probably get better, but I don't think we'll ever see year one Wentz again.
Okay. Whew. Wow. Well, and I guess, maybe this is like, it's Yeah, I feel like it's an arc thing. And if you haven't seen a guy hit his peak, you feel like always in the back of your head, it's like he could get there. Like Darnold, Daniel Jones, like Drew Lock. Like, yeah, these guys sucked last year, but like maybe they're ascending. We don't know. Yeah. It's tough to look at a Wentz and say, I believe in my heart that we could see better than we have seen before, because that would be such a massive turnaround from what he has been on the decline now for so many seasons in a row. So it's, I guess I'm going to have to pay to see it, basically, for lack of a better word. You know, I'm going to have to bet against the Colts I'm going to have to take the dog in a spot where I like, where I'm going against Wentz and company, and have him play at, a 90th percentile level and beat me before I really feel like there is possible for him to revert to the way he was.
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you there. This is a tough team for me just because of the, we've seen, like you said a couple times now, we've seen Reich do it with multiple quarterbacks, but Wentz is not maybe where we're at, where we want to be with another reclamation project for them, even if they're hoping it to be a little more long-term. I brought up the O-line a couple times because of the Costanzo retirement, and the Eric Fisher does feel like a mid-season come in, but I want to touch on not only the O-line as far as it goes to Wentz and his reclamation, quest, but the running backs too. And, I'm not super high on this wide receiver room. I think it's okay. But they do have a decent stable of running backs. So between the O-line playing okay, at least, and maybe even great again like they once were last year, the receivers staying healthy and playing above average. I think, I don't know where you'd put this wide receiver room, probably average. I'm about there, 15, 16. And then the running backs, which it's always hard to grade because so much of running backs isn't skill level, it's usage by the team and play sequencing and how these running backs are used in the scheme. Actually, I have him pretty high. So, like, he doesn't have, like, a big negative around him on the offense. Like, does that make you any more bullish for him considering the bad situation in Philly? Like, Philly didn't draft well for receivers, didn't sign the right receivers. Deshaun Jackson's only good for like 2 games a year, and then massive attrition on the offensive line through constant injuries. So, like, Wentz sucked, and a lot of that was independent of the things around him. But it didn't help that everything bad was going on as well. I mean, I'm just trying to spin anything nice on this. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and I mean, like, as much respect as I have for the Colts as an organization and the fact that they're sort of bounced back from the Andrew Luck retirement on the eve of a season in a way that is admirable, kind of competing for a playoff and then making the playoffs last year with Rivers, and, Frank Reich really kind of now entering his 4th year as the head coach for the Colts. Like, this is a franchise that overall I'm pretty positive about. Ballard has done a great job in general, but there are a couple of vision aspects of the way this team is built and where they've invested their capital and how they've addressed their weaknesses that you can ask some tough questions, right? Like drafting Quentin Nelson was, in hindsight, it should be considered a win, right? Yeah. Like Quentin Nelson is a top 5 interior O lineman in the NFL, full stop. And he will be a franchise cornerstone and a cornerstone of an O line that should come into the top 10 year in, year out without much of a debate. And that should, in general, that should allow you to get better performance out of whatever quarterback you have behind center, be it Jacoby Brissett or Brian Hoyer or Phillip Rivers or Carson Wentz even. But to put as much, I don't know that I want my best player on offense to be a guard. I don't know that I want my best player on defense to be a tackle. Like that's not.
It's great getting interior pressure, but if you only get interior pressure and you're not getting edge pressure, it's like the team was built and they really nailed what they built, but they're nailing the wrong spots. Nothing
Yeah,
against
right.
like Quentin Nelson, probably a Hall of Fame career if he stays healthy.
Quentin Nelson, yeah, Darius Leonard could be too. Linebacker.
Yeah, I mean,
Darius Leonard,
they nailed
be
some of these, but it's like, man, you need to nail quarterback, you need to nail receiver, and you need to nail some defensive backs in the free agent or trade market. Like, make that happen, then you can compete with Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, Cleveland. Those teams, you're not going to, again, if Wentz is just okay or plays above average, maybe where I put his ceiling, 10, 11 games, man.
Yeah,
maybe he gets a wild card. Buffalo or Cleveland kicks the shit out of them, and we do the same thing. So, and again, we'll get to the schedule next. I think, like, as much shit as we talked about this team, and I said 10, 11 wins, it's because of the schedule. Like, the schedule does allow them to probably overperform, not get a great draft pick again. And you want to look at it?
Yeah, let's pull it up. That's a lot of blue.
It is
a lot of blue. Okay. So how do they 2 years in a row get such a soft schedule? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, just the way the rotations have gone for who they're playing and when they get to play these, these.
I guess
divisions.
2 games against Houston, 2 games against Jacksonville doesn't hurt.
That is a big part of it. Like getting your own division to suck doesn't hurt. But then, having the Raiders, having the Cardinals, having the Jets.
Home versus the Jets, home versus the Patriots, home versus the Raiders. Yeah, right. You're right.
And really, like Miami or Tennessee and them are about on even ground. Tennessee power ranked slightly higher. So, or actually Indy's power ranked slightly higher. So being, the supposed alpha in your division, playing some weaker outside of your division doesn't hurt, but the schedule does have some bumps and bruises. You can see that if you're watching on the YouTube channel. If you're not, you should find this. I'm sure Drew has tweeted it out by now. But right off the bat there, the second week of a back-to-back is a trip to Miami while it's still hot. That's not great.
No.
So the first part of the schedule is a little tougher. That Baltimore spot is then. So then you say like, oh, that's a shitty way to go. You go down to Miami while it's hot and humid on the second week of a back-to-back, and then you have a third week of the back-to-back at Baltimore. Like the beginning of the schedule, it's not a bunch of easy wins. Like it's, they're favored at home a couple times against some supposed playoff teams. They're favored on the road a couple times, but then it's back-to-back-to-back. Like they might not come out of that stretch smelling very good, especially with an inexperienced quarterback in their system. It'll be better than last year as far as preseason and camp goes, but still fewer preseason games. I don't know what it's going to look like for how much he plays this preseason. It could be a rocky start for Wentz. And then, you do get the respite of playing Houston after that as a 11.5-point favorite. I don't even think I want to bet Houston there. I'd have to think about it. That's a lot of points.
Yeah, really and truly. I guess let's focus on the beginning of the schedule a little bit.
Yeah, it's
3-point favorites hosting Seattle.
Seems like too much.
1.5-point favorites hosting the Rams. Huh? Okay, now let me qualify. That Rams spot is awful. That's an awful spot for the Rams. I'll probably week 2 I might make a case for Indy depending on what happens against Seattle. But because Rams are coming off of Sunday Night Football, playing late on the West Coast, flying early to play Indy, and week 2 is nasty. But just from a power number standpoint, these numbers are shaded a little in favor of Indy.
I don't understand any of these first 4. Like I'm about a point to a point and a half lower than the market on Indy. So you say a lot of blue numbers, but I think we're saying the same thing. Like these are all probably a touch inflated, especially bringing in a shitty quarterback into a new system. So their power
first
number, 5 games could go bad.
Their power number, according to all of these look-aheads, is plus 2.5. So 2.5 points better than an average team. That is good enough for 8th in the NFL.
That feels high.
That feels real high. And if you break down if you decompose the totals, you want to guess what their offense is expected to rank?
Like 9th?
5th.
Oh, that's stupid.
That's way too high. Defense is expected to rank 14th. That feels about right. Maybe even a little low.
That actually, I was going to say that feels actually maybe a titch low.
Yeah. So in general, if this reflects market pricing overall, I think that people are expecting a little too much out of this Indy offense, and this might be a decent team to find some unders. That opening game again. I don't think that opening 3 lasts. That to me, that screams closes in. There are going to be some people that take that Seattle +3 and are just happy as hell.
If you don't think I'm teasing Seattle.
You take that 2.5 out to 8.5.
If it's a 2.5, it's road dog 2.5. I don't care. I will be utterly shocked if that does not. Especially, I'm going to
utterly shocked.
If we're going to consider an Indy a possible under team, throwing that on top of it in a teaser, I love that. Seattle in a teaser. Yeah, and by the time we get to the Miami game, Miami might be a favorite.
Might be a favorite.
If this offense doesn't succeed. So. Eesh, and then the Baltimore spot is an easy, and then even I will call it early season still, but San Francisco off their bye in the Bay.
Wow, I pulled up. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
Go ahead.
I just pulled up that Seattle Indy total.
Yeah.
You want to guess what that number is?
If it's in the low 50s, it feels like it should be in the high 40s.
52.
Yeah. So I'd make that like 49.5.
Yeah.
Should we bet that under? Are we doing? Is this our first Sunday night game? Are we betting one?
It's not Sunday night, but it's week 1.
Well, a Sunday night podcast where we're live
on
the air.
Yeah.
It's funny because this isn't even live. Sorry, guys.
52, dude. 52.
I got in bed with a Seattle under last year in week 1 with Atlanta. Didn't go so hot.
Yeah. That was a very different situation.
That was a very different situation.
Yeah.
So, let's get through those 7 games. So,
okay.
They beat Houston. The rest of it, I'm not so sure about. Like, worst case scenario is legitimately 1-6.
Yes.
Then you're looking at that. You're looking at that. Man, did we make a mistake? Are we benching Wentz here? You have some very winnable games after that. That's the easy stretch before the big easy stretch. But yeah, Tennessee. We'll get to them next. But Tennessee feels winnable at home, and then you get a rookie head coach, rookie quarterback on a Thursday night, followed by Jacksonville, again rookie coach, rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, and you're getting the extra rest off the bye, or excuse me, the Thursday game, followed by a loss in Buffalo. We're going to call that a loss. And then, and then really the Tampa numbers. Did Tampa had to pick them.
Take that now. No, there's no fucking chance that's pick them. Will come week 12. No chance.
And then this is where I run into the quandaries about this team. Because when I first looked at this, I started doing research. I said, I would like to bet this team to not make the playoffs. A no. Give me a no. And then I look at this last stretch. And yes, the AFC is very top-heavy with some very, very good teams. But those 6 and 7 spots are up for the picking between a bunch of teams. And if this team can get to week 12 and be 6-6, even 5-7, 5-7 might be enough because you go at Houston, by New England, at Arizona, Vegas at home, at Jacksonville, and thrown on top of that, you get extra rest off your bye into New England, which, it's neutralized by their bye as well, but it's still a very easy last 6 weeks, 5 games.
You could be 8 losses, though. You could be 4-8.
I think if you're 4-8, you might be waving the white flag, regardless of how easy the schedule is.
No. You're 4-8, and you then
you
win your last 5. 9. That actually is the worst case scenario.
That's because I don't think that's a playoff team. I think you need 10
I don't think so.
AFC. 9-8 is a terrible scenario. You end up giving your first round pick for Wentz.
Yep.
You end up with a bad position in the draft, and you're kind of in purgatory again. You're the Bears.
Yep, that's bad. That's really bad. And honestly, you can probably bet no to make the playoffs watch them struggle early, and then just do like a
Come back.
5-team money line parlay on them. Bang, 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 bang every week down the stretch. Because they're not going to be 7, 5, 6 3-point favorites in those games if they're 4-8. You know, the market will move their +2.5 down to -2.5 in a heartbeat. Maybe incorrectly, because a lot of this was situationally based.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
no.
that's what my plan is to bet that not maybe
these
not
guys early.
Well, yeah,
Fade the offense early. We fade their offense early. Go. Sorry, go. Yeah, please go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Take them to miss the playoffs, and then I feel like there's books that hang that to make the playoffs live in season, because if they are like 4-8, 5-7, like there's going to be a fat number to come back on the other side. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's still just shooting for the middle. I think there's a perfect storm where you get those wins down the stretch if you're betting them game by game. Yeah, right. You're getting those wins down the stretch. Bang, Houston again. Indy versus Houston. You're going to get a cheap
open
spread.
parlay.
Yeah. Indy hosting New England, you'll get a cheap spread. Arizona, you might get a cheap money line, a dog money line price. And then cheap spread versus the Raiders, cheap spread versus the Jags. So, yeah, I think that's what I think that's the way you attack this, because this does set up for a team that is overrated by the market this moment, an offense that is overrated by the market this moment, and ultimately will land around 500 because the schedule gets extremely soft after the Tampa Bay game, Week 12. So far, the softest we've looked at in terms of final 5 games.
Very, very soft landing. So, yeah, I tried to get cute with it. I don't think I have a plan other than betting on this team late in the season, like you said.
Well, let's look at the odds. Let's move on to odds, because I think we got the right read here. Super Bowl 25-1, AFC 14-1, AFC South, they are -110 for the South right now. Wow. A no on that might be worth a flyer. AFC South, no.
They give you a yes, no, like anyone else wins the South, or figure out how to Dutch those other 3 teams together. Basically like 80% Tennessee, 20% Jacksonville, 0% Houston.
To make the playoffs, yes is -190, no is +150. Regular season win total over 9.5, -150. Wow. So this has moved a little. This has moved in favor of Indy. So people are buying this team. This is not the market set the price too high and it's coming down. People are buying this team.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Over 9.5 is -150. Under 9.5 is +120. I think we just tucked ourselves into this team lands 9 and 8. So that's not enough margin for me to get involved in under 9.5, even at the plus money. Okay, but I think, to make the playoffs, no, +150 is pretty interesting, especially, I think your point was very, very, very fair. You have a lot of outs for that, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to bet anything on this team really preseason. To win the division, which essentially, like I said, it's probably just Dutching Tennessee and putting a little bit on Jacksonville.
Okay.
Unless you can just find a straight no, then I would bet that. To win the division, no. To make the playoffs, +150 probably isn't big enough for me, in my mind, based on how soft the landing is at the end of the season. And then under 9.5, again, it feels like that's the bet, but the super soft schedule at the end kind of nixes that as well. So not a lot I love to bet on this team. Would you look at Wentz season passing yards under, based off the fact that he could get benched and you get to be an auto winner there?
He could get benched. He could get hurt.
Yeah, he has had a history of injuries as well.
Actually, if you go back to last year's Philly preview, we were specifically sidestepping Philly in any way, shape, or form because their drafting of Jalen Hurts in round 2 we saw as a red flag of they were concerned about Wentz's health, like his back. Like he might be not long for this league because of his back. Do you remember that? I think that's still
Yeah,
real. That's
I
still
think we
real.
joked.
That's
We
still a
didn't, we
real
didn't
concern.
joke around about it. We said retirement because of just
No,
too
I'm
many
not saying we
injuries.
were joking. I'm saying we specifically stepped
Yeah.
around doing anything with Philly because of that angle. That's still real, especially if Eric Fisher's out and you have a blindside hit coming against Aaron Donald comes and takes him down in week 2. There's a lot of paths to Wentz passing yards total under, I think.
Yeah.
And not a lot to the over.
The only thing I worry about as far as benching him is the backups are Jacob Eason, Washington quarterback got drafted last year, and Sam Ellinger. Neither of those are those are guys you draft to be backups. I don't think they're very excited about either of those men to be back.
So this is ride or die Wentz.
It might be ride or die unless it really gets bad. Or if he's injured, he's injured. You can't just say, well, I don't care if his leg's broken. He's going to play because we have Jacob Eason on the bench. So, yeah.
You might need to know. This happens. If you're 4-8, you might decide we need to know what we have in Eason.
Yeah, Eason, Ellinger, let's give him some shots, give him some reps, see what happens. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not super confident with the backup situation, obviously. So, yeah, staying away. I would bet recommendation would be if you can find a no on winning the South, you should be able to get evenish on that. I would take that.
An early in the season under team.
Yep.
I just off the top of my head, if they're going to give you 52 points in this game, actually now you know what? Now I got to pull up what the rest of those damn totals are. Hang on just a second. You want to know you want to guess some totals here? As long as we got you. We got Gabe, week 2. The LA Rams, as I mentioned, are in a brutal spot coming off of a primetime game against Chicago. They got to go at Indy and play early. You want to guess what that total is?
One more time. What game was it?
Week 2, Rams come to town. Early spot.
Oh, it's the Rams. Maybe like 50?
49.5, yeah. Week 3 at Tennessee.
52.
49.5.
Really?
Okay.
That one's the same? I would have put a little higher for Tennessee.
Week 4 at Miami.
49.5? Or are we just going to keep doing that?
47, yeah. But, these are high.
In the Miami offense.
These are high, man. I think a lot of these come under, especially like that week 1. Look.
Yeah.
Under 52. That's going to be sweet. All right. Should we move on to our Tennessee Titans?
Tennessee. Yeah, we can just re-record and have Dan edit this and put different words in our mouths for what we say. Hey, they won 11 games last year and they lost their offensive coordinator. Like it's the same thing, and lost to a good team in the playoffs. They lost to the Ravens in the playoffs. You know what's super underreported? And I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. Derrick Henry had 2,000 yards. That used to be like now it's not like a badge of. It's like, oh my God, you guys run the ball too much. What are you like? How did you get a guy to 2,000 yards? What the fuck are you doing? No wonder you lost to the Ravens after a masterclass 2 years ago. It was a bad. And we've been over this already. It was a bad playoff game plan, I think, when they did make it to the playoffs. But it was another successful year under Vrabel and Art Smith. And again, yeah, they were 11-5. They had a better conference or division record. So they did win the division last year by the skin of their teeth, finishing with the same record as Indy. I don't know if it was any better of a playoff draw, having the Ravens right away than losing to the Ravens there. And here we are.
At least you're home, not heading up to Buffalo.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I guess my 2020. I was high on them coming into 2020. I was very bullish on them winning the South at a very favorable price. I thought, mostly on the back of was a very soft schedule. It got weird though. Remember, they had to kind of rearrange their bye. They had to take their bye week 4 because of the COVID stuff, and then they were practicing during COVID, and then they didn't get punished for it, and then they beat the Buffalo Bills 42-16 coming out of the COVID stuff when everyone was like, well, they haven't been practicing, and it's like, no, we have been practicing, but it's been a secret. Yeah, right.
Yeah, outside of maybe Pittsburgh, they had their season messed up the most by weird COVID stuff. I still can't believe that. It felt like somebody juggling 30 plates at once. Like the fact that we were able to get all the games in the NFL season in the 17-week time frame. We had some Tuesday night football. We had some weird Monday night football, but we got them all done. And yeah, that was it just goes to show, I guess, that if you aren't cheating, you aren't trying, because they weren't supposed to be practicing.
Yeah. Only one time did you have to have a wide receiver start as a quarterback. Only one game.
And fuck Denver, I guess.
So Tennessee gets off to a hot 5-0 start. They really, but again, it was kind of soft landing. They didn't cover a lot of these games. They barely beat the Vikings, barely beat the Jags.
Which it's weird for a team that can run the ball so well.
Yeah,
those teams should be covering teams. They were a little weird with it at the end, but yeah, the starting out with the Broncos game, like, yeah, you won, but you beat a Broncos team by, what was that, like a field? Like, they won everything by like a field goal. Here, I have it up, actually.
Well, that Broncos game, week one was insane because what's his name was missing every freaking kick. What was his name? Goskowski was missing every single kick, and then he finally hit the game-winning. Field goal.
Jacksonville coming off a win at playing Indy, almost right there with the Titans. That was tied, I think, at 30 late. They won that by a field goal. They beat Minnesota 31-13, where they trailed at half. Minnesota. It was in Minnesota. And Minnesota was not a good team, but they weren't terrible. The Bills game made no sense when you look at how the season went, how many points they put up on them, how good that defense was. It was in Tennessee, I guess, but that was 42-16. And then the last one was giving up more points to Houston than Buffalo felt weird. Seeing they're both at Tennessee, but winning 42-16 and then winning 42-36. And those were not garbage points. Actually, the Texans did not score in the fourth quarter. Those 36 points are scored in – oh, yeah, they did. No, it was 13 in the fourth. I'm looking at our overtime. I'm like, God, that would be super weird. So it was 15-13 in the fourth quarter. Never mind. Ignore me there. Texans actually put it on them right after halftime, scored 13 straight. And
I remember that. Yeah, they were in complete control, and they couldn't put that game away. Yeah,
that game got weird. Yeah, I do remember that one now. That was a CBS.
This was Romeo Crennel. This was Romeo Crennel trying to get a win after. This was the first Romeo Crennel game, right?
Yep. Yeah, it was. Because it would have been 4 losses for. Oh man, that was a weird one. I do recall that now. The Titans not being able to put that away because they were up 21-10 at halftime, got that done. Lose to the Steelers because everybody was losing to the Steelers. Obviously, you beat the Bengals. Whoops. The Bengals.
You lost your ass to the Bengals.
31 points.
And honestly, like this entire outside of the Bills game, a common theme emerged early, and it was obvious, and that was that this defense was bad. It was bad. It stunk out loud. And there were a couple of key things that were very obvious. Number one, the coverage was not great, so you could pass on them. And number two, they were completely unable to generate any semblance of a pass rush. So even average quarterbacks who you could, if you put under pressure, performed below average, those average guys looked good, right? And it was pretty it was a pretty telltale problem. And it was like, okay, well, eventually this will unwind this team. This will undo this team. If they can't get to the quarterback, if they can't bring him down when they win 1v1, then they are screwed. And that carried really through the whole season. I thought they were lucky to beat the Bears and get back on track. They lose to the Colts in ugly fashion on the road. And yeah, I mean, that impressive win at Baltimore in overtime, a drubbing of the Colts turned around and they lost their asses to the Browns. Even that final score wasn't indicative of how bad.
Yeah, the Browns only scored like 3 points in the second half there.
That was
20. Sorry, trigger warning for anyone, but the second half was 28-3 Titans. Titans still lose by
28-3. Yeah. They win 3 of their last 4, which clinched their division. But even that last game against the Texans was in the balance late. and they needed 228 yards rushing from Derrick Henry so that he could get his 2,000-yard season, and they could get their home playoff game, which they promptly lost. So it was a very roller coaster season to be a Titans backer. They did it in spite of a bad defense. They did it a weird way.
5 overs.
Big time. The quarterback play was good. Ryan Tannehill was a pretty obvious top 10 QB by my metrics in last season. Overall, their offense was pretty clearly top 10 by my metrics last season. And Derrick Henry carried the ball 378 times. Is that a lot?
That feels like a lot.
It is a lot. That's a lot.
I don't think he'll ever get tired.
Okay.
Someday.
One of these days.
Yeah, one of these
no,
days.
his usage was insane.
Any time where one of your coordinators gets hired away, I consider that a successful season. Doesn't matter. It was a weird year. They lost to some teams they shouldn't have lost to. They beat some teams they probably shouldn't have beat, and they won their division. They lost their offensive coordinator because of it. And I don't really have a great feeling for this offense going forward. I just can't see it taking a massive step back. I guess some of the efficiency numbers could suffer, and this schedule is now a first place schedule, I guess.
I can see it taking a step back.
I can see it taking a step back. I just don't see it like regressing to the point. Like I don't give this team one of those real low floors. Like
I don't know about that, man.
Too much talent left on this roster on the offense. Like
what about that Ravens game? What about that Ravens playoff game? What if that's the Tennessee Titans offense in 2021?
I really don't see that. Like that seems like a one-off. I still don't to this day understand why that was the game plan. Hopefully they watch that. I mean, when your season ends by having a game plan like that, hopefully you never do that again. But like
that was what if Art Smith has one foot out the door and that was Vrabel's vision for what he wants this offense to look like.
Then could be bad. But again, I just feel like there's still too much talent here. And really, like I think it was another from within. Yeah, Todd Downing. You know who Todd Downing is? Yeah.
Never heard of him.
Todd Downing from Minnesota boy.
Is he an heir of a different postal franchise?
No, but he has some championships. He has a Class A state 5A state title in Minnesota with the Eden Prairie Ponies. Is it Ponies or is it Stillwater? And you know who he coached against in that final game in 2000?
No.
Cretin-Durham Hall. Where Matt Burke went. Cretin-Durham Hall gave us Joe Mauer, Paul Molitor, and Matt Burke. Eden Prairie is very good though. So yeah, he's been around for a while. He's made his way through the ranks, and yeah, I don't know shit about him. Like I'm gonna go back and watch Prep Bowl 13 from 2000 to see him. Otherwise, yeah, not only that, but essentially you're getting a new DC here this year too, because they didn't have one when they replaced Dean Pease with nobody. Then later on, they found out that this one guy was the guy was calling the plays and wasn't getting paid for it, essentially, which I guess whatever. He got the DC job now. After the season, he said, like, this linebackers coach has been calling the defensive plays. Jim Schwartz in as an advisor, assistant defensive coach. I don't think that's a negative. So, like, really, the floor is what was pushing this offense more, Art Smith or the talent? And if you think it's Art Smith, there is a floor. There's a floor to hit here.
I think it's a little different than that, but I do think Art Smith was a huge part of this success.
I think for sure, but also
I think you caught all pro play for running back Derrick Henry for a 2-year sample, and you used up every freaking drop of it.
Yeah.
Well, combine that with a Tannehill who is extremely good at throwing 11 to 20-yard passes down the sidelines. A couple of wide receivers that were really good at creating separation in that area. And, been big guys. A.J. Brown's a big boy. He's tough to tackle. He can get you yards after the catch.
Remember that touchdown where he caught it like the 7 with 5 guys around him.
Yeah.
He's a big dude. We talked about this in the Atlanta one. The Julio thing doesn't move the needle a ton, but it definitely helps with the departure of Corey Davis. So I'm fine with the Julio thing. Like, I think it's not a bad thing. Like, for sure. Like, it helps. But it's not. This is like not 2015 Julio. Yeah. Like, it's old Julio. It helps.
Expecting this passing offense to be like Chiefs light. No.
What it comes down to with this Todd Downing character is, and this is the stuff that you can't answer preseason without, like, I don't know, getting into camp. Like, how much is Todd Downing wanting to do things his way, and how much is Todd Downing deciding, hey, here's what I learned from Art when he was here. Here's what worked. Here's what made this offense go. The most play action in the league on early downs, a lot of motion, and a lot of just good play sequencing with a terrible defense.
Yeah.
Like, if he just decides, like, well, I'd like to be success. Like, what's more important, your ego or your success, I guess? Because if he wants to be successful, just, continue to do what they did, improve upon that, or go about your own way. If you want to go about your own way, your chances of success is still there. It could work, but there's a much bigger chance of failure. So I think a lot comes down to the play calling because, again, Tannehill's great. It's great with his legs. He has a strong enough arm. You have good receivers. You have a very good running back who can do a lot of things. And the rest of, the offensive lines, it's there. Like, I think they're fine. So, like, the offense is there. It just, if you decide to take the game plan and completely deviate from what we did last year, it might be a low floor.
I think there's enough temptation to try to use Derrick Henry in a minus EV way, combined with his overusage of 2 seasons in a row, that things go sideways, go poorly, and that they don't look anything close to the Art Smith offense we remember from 2 years ago. And I think there could probably be some overreaction to that, honestly. Like, there could be like, it was all Art Smith. And in reality, well, no, it just happened to be the timing was perfect. You got Pete.
You know what that would help?
Henry. Well, his coach of the year candidacy. Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
I've switched gears here. I need Todd Downing. I need you to fail. You know what? And maybe best case scenario, and we would never wish an injury upon anyone not named Aaron Rodgers, is maybe he breaks down early. Like, all those carries are too much for Derrick Henry. Maybe he gets dinged up. He's not, they have to limit him a little. Like, you don't want Derrick Henry out. You want him limited, like, hey, we should keep him to like 15 carries today. And that makes you use them more wisely. And all of a sudden the game plan's plus, because, the temptation is, let's run the guy who had, 3,000 yards last year or whatever,
man. Need to get him up to 30 carries, and then he's going to run over these guys.
Oh, my God. He's going to break one of these days. He's just going to fall apart. Too many carries. So, that's where I'm at. I like the Jim Schwartz thing a little. I don't know. I haven't read too much.
Well, here's the problem is Jim Schwartz always used to rock with just an absolute bunch of horses on the D line. He did not have that.
No, and I think that's probably why he didn't take a job. He's like, I don't want my name on this. I'll just come in and help. Bud Dupree, does that move the needle for you? He's great, but he's great because I don't want to shit on Bud Dupree at all. But I think part of his greatness was being surrounded by so many other good players. That was a good defense. Like, that helps. Being this guy on a shitty defense doesn't help. You can put 2 hats on,
but you can put 2 hats on Bud Dupree.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Bud Dupree's coming off an ACL. Put 2 hats on him. Take him out of the game. And then go pick rookie starting QB, starting CB Caleb Farley. Go pick him apart.
That's the thing. Like I'm saying, in Pittsburgh, you couldn't let's double this guy. Well, then Watt's going to get us. Like, you can't just put 2 hats in the one good pass rusher. They had 3. So, Clowney gone, Jonnu Smith gone, Desmond King gone, Corey Davis gone, Adoree Jackson gone. You bring in Dupree and Julio and draft Caleb Farley. We've been on record many a time saying young quarterbacks are hard to step in and compete right away with the big boys. So
combine that with the guy coming off injuries.
it might be a step back for a bad defense, which actually I'll roll that back. I think the defense is going to be equally shitty to last year.
I agree.
Equally shitty. The offense has more of a chance to step backwards than forward because they're touching their ceiling already with the top of the hairs in their head. So
they will be this
defense
defense will be above the Mendoza line at stopping the run. I'm fine with their run stopping possibilities. I like Brown and Evans as off-ball linebackers. They're fine. But they're still not going to be able to generate a pass rush, and they're still not going to be able to cover teams
anyone,
that have a competent passing game.
Yep, that's where I'm at. So
they're going to make all the average and below average QBs on their schedule look like good quarterbacks.
Yeah. So just to run through again the additions to a bad defense. And what would you have done differently if you were? I get like the Bud Dupree move makes sense. It sucks he's off an injury. If you can get anybody across from him that's any semblance of pass
I would have
rush.
I would have done what the Browns did and get those guys from the Rams.
Yeah.
Get those coverage guys from the Rams.
I would have got a corner. Like I would have, you're starting a rookie. They got Janoris Jenkins. I forgot to add that. That doesn't, you know what? That's an upgrade. I'm going to say it's an upgrade.
Yeah. It's been a while since I really thought of him as an especially impactful player.
He's not great, but it's an upgrade for somebody like Tennessee. I think it's an upgrade for them. They have continuity at the safeties, at least. It'll be the same guys as last year, as bad as that was. And then Farley probably starting. If not, I don't know if he's done much slot coverage. You got Fulton too. It's not going to be a good cover secondary. It's not going to be a good pass rush. It's like, well, let's, like you said, make sure Dupree doesn't hurt us and we can beat this defense. Okay, linebackers. So the defensive addition and subtraction game left them probably, even though you made a very big splash in a name like Bud Dupree, you bring in Janoris Jenkins, you bring in some other guys, losing Adoree, losing Desmond King, I don't even, Clowney's a name. I'm not sure if that matters, but losing those guys and the fact that Dupree's off an injury and your team as a whole is as bad as it was on defense, I think it's probably about the same defense we saw last year.
I don't disagree.
So did they win the division somehow anyway?
I don't think so.
And it's not the worst first place schedule.
Let's pull up this. Yeah, let's pull up and try to break this down. It's harder than the Colts.
It is harder than the Colts. It's still a first place schedule that
it also starts difficult.
Buffalo, KC back to back, man.
I feel good about having a Jags ticket, to be honest with you. Not that I necessarily expect to cash it, but just the likelihood that the Jags could be a surprise 3-3 while the rest of these teams stumble early. And then maybe we can scoop up some value on whoever of the Tennessee Colts doesn't shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think you have to be planning on adding a second ticket to the Jags ticket.
I do too, but this is not. I mean, you have 3 games out of your first 9 where you are favored, and all of them are under a field goal. That's not good.
Yeah. It is a tough start for them, and if this offense isn't what we've seen for the past 2 years, it'll be a very rough start for them. But at Seattle is never easy.
That's not a good spot.
The 2 other, you got back-to-backs, but at least it's the Jets and the Jags, I guess.
Yeah.
The Jets, and not only that, the Jags are off the back of a back-to-back roadie, plus you get the extra rest. No, they get the extra rest off Thursday night, so it's kind of a weird spot, kind of negates itself.
That's a bad one for you.
And then this is the thing too, getting an opponent on the second leg of a back-to-back road game is good.
But it's KC and Buffalo.
Yeah, less so when it's the 2 teams that met in the AFC title game last year. And KC and Buffalo.
You're right.
Weird spots there. They get, again, another back-to-back roadie that includes a West Coast trip to LA in the second leg for the Rams. I mean, Houston is always going to be an easy one. Houston, if you're going to face any team off their bye, at least it's Houston at home, so that hurts a little less. You get 2 opponents off Thursday Night Football. They're New England and Pittsburgh. which we haven't got to really. Pittsburgh yet. I'm not sure what we make of that team. Those are not. It's not great spots. Jacksonville gets a little bit of revenge there. They get to. No, Jacksonville will be coming off the second road game when. Oh, that's in a really nice spot. Look at that. Spot. They get one really nice spot. Jacksonville is off a back-to-back.
No, they get two really nice spots. Their Miami game week 17 is also
Miami.
Really nice.
Miami is actually the real catbird one. But yeah, week 14, Jacksonville at home. Jacksonville coming off of being on a second straight roadie, and you're off your bye. And then that's what have we given that one a name yet? You were off
the super secret extra rest.
Yeah, spot. You were off a Thursday game. Your opponent is off a Monday game. Extra. And then they're also, your opponent is on the second leg of a road game, 2-game road strand. So, yeah, that's a really nice spot to back them there. And then you end the season with a hopefully dead Houston team by then. 8 wins implied feels about right because it's not.
Yeah,
it's
you
tougher.
Know what?
It's tougher.
I think here's what happens. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of story as the Colts, where it doesn't start great. Same kind of story as the Colts, where it's just a beauty down the home stretch, right?
Yeah.
I think I hold on to my Jags ticket, which is basically a money line Jags week 5 ticket, because if the Jags win that game, then all of a sudden the division odds tilt in favor of Jags if Colts are sucking and Tennessee is sucking, right? Mm-hmm. And then the Tennessee then goes to hell. That Buffalo, KC, Indy at Rams stretch. Oh my God, that is hell. That little 4-game stretch right there is miserable.
Fun.
Miserable.
What if the Saints are good?
No, if the Saints are good, that add it to the pile. And then But if the Saints are who we think they are, if coming out of that Rams game, the Titans are 3-8, or so excuse me, they would be 3-6, I guess only.
3-6.
That they're 3-6 with a loss to the Jags. That's pretty darn good for backing Tennessee to win the South at that time, because at 3-6 there, I can conceivably see a path to
9-7.
Yes, 10-7. I can conceivably get a pass to 10-7. Yeah.
Yeah.
One more.
They could get
twice. Right. They could get
to
the end of
Miami spots we talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They could get to the end of their schedule with only one more loss, and 10-7 would win the South at that point.
Well, let's go find some Jags 12-1s to go with a late season, and then you choose your own adventure on Indy or Tennessee, who you want to add. If
exactly, yes,
if Wentz is looking like it's going to happen, or Indy is playing well enough, and it's like, well, shit, they're 500 heading into this last 6. They might be like an 11-win team here. What are we doing?
That's the plan.
I like that we have a plan. A bad division to talk about. Not a lot of fun.
Terrible.
A lot of new
quarterbacks,
new coordinators, new coaches. Yeesh.
Yep. Not a team that I'm excited to have anything to do with out of the gate. Let me comment real quick on their power numbers here. So again, decomposing all of those lines, their power number is only +0.5, which does not square with Indianapolis being +2.5. Am I right?
Yep.
That's tough to square.
I would have them both at like a +1.
Yes, same.
That's about where I'm at. I'm
Tennessee right now.
Shade higher on Tennessee.
Tennessee is 15th compared to Indianapolis 8. Right now, Tennessee is the 12th best offense projected compared to Indianapolis 5th. And then Tennessee 22nd best defense, which feels just about right, if not a little bit high. So, yeah, I think this is a team that is worth staying away from in the betting market in general until later in the season. And then at that point, maybe we back some overs. We take them as some dogs.
Overs, team total overs, back them as a dog. I think you probably still want to avoid AFC and Super Bowl numbers because even if they do rattle it off, we're betting it because they have an easy schedule. The AFC playoffs are anything but. So I will never be adding. I'd really have to see something like, oh my God, like this Todd Downing kid's really getting it.
All right, here you go.
And Julio's fountain of youth.
I think it is extremely likely that the winner of this AFC South is the 4 seed, which means they host the best wildcard team. Ravens?
Which is probably the Ravens or Browns.
Or Browns.
Depending on how those two teams shake out.
Yes.
Let's pull the odds up. What do we got? 25-1.
Also 25. Same as is this just a copy and paste error? No. Also 25-1 as the Colts. Also 14-1 as the Colts. But the AFC South odds are plus 120 compared to the Colts minus 110. To make the playoffs, yes, minus 140. No, plus 115. And we have a regular season win total where over 9.5 is also juiced minus 125. Under 9.5 is plus 100. This opened also at 9.5, so there hasn't been a ton of activity in the betting market here for the win totals. Maybe, if anything, a little bit of action to the over, which, again, considering their schedule and how it starts, is not necessarily explainable to me. At least if they start their schedule a little suspect, we know Tannehill is safe. Like, Tannehill is not going anywhere. He's not going to be part of the problem. If this team underachieves, it's because their offensive scheme stinks and their defense is horrible. So Tannehill always live. I think I'm already leaning. I want Tennessee as the team to come back and win the South at a depressed price. I think my buy point probably 5-1. My buy point is probably 5-1.
If we take the two teams we spoke about today,
maybe 4-1.
If they both struggle with early season schedule and they both have easier second half schedules, give me the team with a quarterback. And even if the scheme has gone to shit, Tannehill is, and again, everything changes. Keep your head on a swivel. You never know. Wentz, stranger things have happened than, Carson Wentz playing well again. I think not a lot of stranger things, but a few. So keep your head on a swivel. But as of this moment right now, today on August 4th, 2020, on the year of our Lord, 2021, we are saying the Titans would be a better bet mid-season if a couple teams struggle, especially if you have a Jags ticket.
God, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Plus, the later the season goes, the more effective Derrick Henry would be, presumably, assuming his legs don't fall off. Yeah, he's when the weather gets cold, it's a lot less fun to tackle Derrick Henry. And maybe they learn their lesson too. Maybe they learn to deploy their assets a little differently. I mean, I'm broadly speculating that they're not going to have this thing figured out, but I think it's a fair speculation considering the way that Matt Vrabel coached the playoff game, which I think gave us a lot of insight into who he is as a thinker.
I like your thesis on that. If it was was this more Vrabel than Art Smith in the playoffs because he was, taking another
one foot out the door.
Yeah,
1 foot out the door. You know what? It's really hard. It was really hard to get prepped for, finals as a senior in college when you have a job.
Yeah, you start doing the math on a grade. Like, what if I got like a 50 on this? Like, what would this grade look like? Because honestly, it is funny too. I've looked at. I don't know. I might be in the 4 digits on the amount of resumes I've looked at over my career, doing interviews and hiring stuff. It's close. It's into the hundreds, and it is amazing how many people put GPA. I'm like, motherfucker, you're 30. Like, I don't care. Like, or the best is like high school GPA.
You're like, this isn't telling me what you think it's telling me about you.
Yeah. This is not getting you hired.
This is telling me something about you, but it's not what you think.
Yeah. Don't. Maybe just a little tip at the end, a little nugget. Don't put your GPA on your resume unless it's your. I think it's acceptable if it's your very first job out of college. After that CV, that's a spot where you just write, I went to Bryn Mawr, communications, 2010.
Yep. Yep.
That's it.
I graduated. So, you can look that up and you will find my name. It's on the rolls.
Unless you're up for the Notre Dame coaching job.
In that case, do not. Yeah.
People do look things up apparently. So, all right, let's call it a day. We'll be back next week with more of these, huh?
Good stuff. Very good. Good work. I think we're halfway.